Weak leaders don't fall suddenly. They disappear slowly, while everyone watches. At first, people still respect them. They still listen. They still follow. But something subtle begins to change. Voices grow louder around them. Advice turns into pressure. Loyalty becomes conditional. And before the leader realizes it, they are no longer in control. Niccolo Machiavelli observed this pattern repeatedly. He saw rulers who inherited power, leaders who were admired, and commanders who were trusted. Yet despite their position, they collapsed quietly. Not because they lacked authority, not because they lacked intelligence, but because they lacked something deeper. They lacked perceived strength. Machiavelli understood a dangerous truth about human nature. People do not follow titles. They follow certainty. They follow confidence. They follow the individual who appears capable of protecting their future. The moment a leader looks uncertain, loyalty begins to shift. Imagine a ruler sitting in a grand hall. Advisors stand beside him. Generals wait for orders. Supporters watch silently. The leader speaks carefully, trying to be fair. He listens to everyone. He avoids conflict. He tries to satisfy all sides. At first, this looks wise, but something else happens. One advisor begins interrupting. Another starts challenging decisions openly. A general delays action, waiting for clearer direction. Supporters exchange glances. The leader is still in power, but authority is weakening. Machiavelli believed weakness is not about kindness. It is about hesitation. When decisions become slow, people sense uncertainty, and uncertainty creates fear. When people feel fear, they search for stability. If the leader does not provide it, they begin looking elsewhere. This is how weak leaders begin losing control, not through rebellion, but through silent repositioning. Advisors begin aligning with stronger voices. Followers begin supporting more decisive individuals. The center of influence shifts, and the leader remains unaware. Because weakness rarely looks obvious, it appears as caution. It appears as fairness. It appears as diplomacy. But underneath, it signals vulnerability. Machiavelli wrote that a ruler must avoid appearing weak more than he must avoid appearing harsh. Because people tolerate harshness if it provides stability. They do not tolerate uncertainty. Uncertainty threatens survival. Imagine two leaders. One is strict, decisive, and sometimes unpopular. The other is kind, cautious, and avoids confrontation. At first, people prefer the second leader. He seems fair. He listens. He respects everyone. But when crisis appears, everything changes. The cautious leader delays decisions. He gathers opinions. He tries to avoid offending anyone. Meanwhile, the decisive leader acts quickly. He provides direction. He appears confident. People begin trusting the decisive leader, not because they like him more, but because he reduces uncertainty. Machiavelli saw this repeatedly. In unstable times, people move toward strength. They abandon leaders who appear unsure, even if those leaders are moral. This is why weak leaders are destroyed, not because people hate them, but because people stop relying on them. Once reliance disappears, power collapses. This collapse is rarely dramatic. It happens quietly. Advisors bypass the leader. Decisions occur without approval. Influence moves elsewhere. Eventually, the leader still holds the title, but no longer holds control. Machiavelli considered this the most dangerous position. A leader without authority invites challenges. Once people realize the leader cannot enforce decisions, they begin testing limits. Small disobedience appears first, then open disagreement, then defiance. Each step weakens the leader further. And because the leader avoids confrontation, the cycle accelerates. This is the first mistake weak leaders make. They believe avoiding conflict preserves unity. But Machiavelli understood that avoiding necessary conflict creates instability. Conflict, when controlled, reinforces authority. Avoided conflict invites disrespect. Imagine a ruler who allows advisors to argue publicly. He tries to calm them instead of deciding. Over time, advisors begin competing openly. They no longer seek permission. They push their own agendas. The ruler becomes a mediator, not a leader. And once this shift happens, power fragments. Machiavelli warned that fragmentation destroys leadership faster than opposition. Because fragmented authority means no one knows who truly controls decisions. When direction is unclear, people follow whoever seems strongest at the moment. Influence becomes fluid. Loyalty becomes temporary. This is the environment where weak leaders fall. They do not lose power at once. They lose it piece by piece. One decision ignored, one command delayed, one challenge unanswered. Each moment reduces perceived strength, and perception is everything. Machiavelli emphasized that leadership depends more on perception than reality. A leader may still have power, but if people believe he is weak, they act accordingly, and actions create reality. Once people behave as if the leader is weak, he becomes weak. This psychological shift is irreversible unless the leader reasserts authority quickly. But weak leaders rarely do. They hope things stabilize. They wait. They negotiate. And while they wait, influence moves. This is why Machiavelli advised rulers to act decisively at the first sign of disorder. Early strength prevents later rebellion. Delayed strength invites challenge. Weak leaders misunderstand this. They think patience will restore unity. But patience without authority creates vacuum, and vacuum attracts ambition. When no strong direction exists, ambitious individuals rise. Advisors begin building support. Generals form alliances. Influential figures test boundaries. They do not attack immediately. They observe first. If the leader responds firmly, they retreat. If the leader hesitates, they advance. This testing continues until someone realizes the leader will not resist. Then the shift becomes permanent. Power moves quietly. Machiavelli saw leaders who lost authority before they even realized they were challenged. By the time they reacted, loyalty had already shifted. This is why he believed weakness is not a moral flaw. It is a strategic vulnerability. It invites competition. It encourages defiance. It dissolves control. Strong leaders do not allow this environment to form. They establish clarity early. They decide quickly. They reinforce boundaries. This does not mean they are cruel. It means they are predictable. Predictability creates stability. Stability creates trust. Trust creates loyalty. Weak leaders reverse this. Hesitation creates uncertainty. Uncertainty creates fear. Fear creates distance. And distance dissolves loyalty. Machiavelli understood that leadership is psychological. People follow the one who appears capable of guiding them safely. The moment that perception breaks, leadership collapses. This is why weak leaders often appear surprised when they fall. They believed kindness would protect them. They believed fairness would maintain loyalty. But human nature follows strength, not brutality, not cruelty, but visible certainty. The leader who speaks calmly and decides firmly becomes trusted. The leader who hesitates and negotiates endlessly becomes questioned, and questioning leads to erosion. This erosion is silent. It spreads through conversations, glances, and subtle shifts. People begin asking others instead of the leader. They begin relying on different voices. The center moves, and once the center moves, the leader stands alone. This is how weak leaders are destroyed, not by enemies, but by the absence of confidence. Machiavelli believed that once confidence disappears, even allies become cautious. They protect themselves first. They distance quietly, because aligning with weakness is dangerous. People do not want to sink with failing leadership, so they reposition early. This self-preservation accelerates collapse, and the leader trying to hold unity becomes isolated. This is the paradox. The more the weak leader tries to please everyone, the more everyone leaves, because pleasing everyone signals dependence. Dependence signals insecurity. Insecurity invites replacement. Ambitious individuals watch carefully. They do not challenge immediately. They wait until the leader's credibility weakens. Then they present themselves as stable alternatives. Followers shift quietly. The weak leader notices people consulting someone else. He becomes defensive. He tries to reassert control, but resistance grows because the psychological shift has already occurred. People now compare. They see one person decisive. They see the leader hesitant. They move toward decisiveness. This is why Machiavelli emphasized perception over intention. A leader may intend fairness, but if he appears unsure, people respond to appearance. Weak leaders misunderstand this. They believe their good intentions are visible, but followers judge behavior, not intention. Hesitation communicates doubt. Doubt communicates weakness. Weakness invites challenge, and challenge accelerates collapse. Machiavelli's insight was ruthless but accurate. Leadership survives on controlled fear, not terror, but awareness of consequence. When consequences disappear, authority dissolves. Weak leaders remove consequences in pursuit of kindness. But kindness without firmness becomes permission. People push boundaries. Discipline erodes. Eventually, the leader faces a room where no one waits for his decision. This is the silent destruction. No revolt, no dramatic fall, just absence of control. And once control disappears, recovery becomes nearly impossible. Because authority, once lost, is difficult to rebuild. People remember weakness. They test again. They expect retreat. Weak leaders fall into this cycle repeatedly. They attempt firmness, face resistance, then soften. Each retreat confirms their weakness. Machiavelli warned that leaders must decide early who they are, firm or hesitant, because shifting between both destroys credibility. The weak leader delays this decision. He tries to balance everything, but balance without strength collapses. Power requires direction. Without direction, leadership dissolves into noise. And in that noise, the strongest voice takes control. Once authority weakens and influence begins shifting, another silent transformation occurs. People stop protecting the leader. This is the stage Machiavelli considered irreversible, because real power is not just about obedience. It is about protection. Strong leaders are defended even when they are not present. Weak leaders are criticized even when they are. When a leader is strong, followers silence dissent. They correct rumors. They reinforce his authority. They act as extensions of his power. But when a leader appears weak, the opposite happens. Criticism spreads quietly. Doubts grow openly. Support disappears silently. No one defends him anymore. This absence of defense is dangerous, because leadership depends on collective perception. Once followers stop reinforcing authority, the leader stands alone. Machiavelli observed rulers who were still in power. Yet conversations about replacing them began in whispers. Advisors spoke carefully at first, then more openly. Eventually, discussions became normal. The leader was still present, but no longer protected. Weak leaders often mistake silence for loyalty. They see no open rebellion, so they assume stability. But Machiavelli understood that silence can hide withdrawal. People remain physically present, but mentally disengaged. They follow minimally. They support selectively. They wait cautiously. This waiting is critical, because people anticipate change. They begin preparing for new leadership. Alliances shift, trust transfers, and the weak leader feels something is wrong, but cannot identify it. This uncertainty deepens his hesitation. He becomes more careful, more diplomatic, more accommodating. He hopes to rebuild trust through kindness, but kindness without strength appears as fear. Followers sense it. They conclude the leader knows he is losing control. And once followers believe the leader knows he is weak, the collapse accelerates. Because now the leader appears reactive instead of commanding. Machiavelli warned that leaders must never appear reactive. Reactivity signals loss of initiative. It shows the leader is responding to pressure rather than shaping direction. Strong leaders create movement. Weak leaders respond to movement. This reversal changes everything. Once a leader reacts instead of leads, followers shift attention. They begin watching someone else for direction. That person may not even hold formal power, but influence moves towards certainty. Machiavelli saw this in courts where advisors gradually became more influential than rulers. They spoke confidently. They gave direction. People listened. The ruler still sat at the center, but attention moved elsewhere. Attention is power. When attention shifts, authority follows. Weak leaders rarely understand this. They believe control comes from issuing commands. But commands only work when people already accept authority. If attention moves, commands lose force. Imagine a leader giving an instruction. The room listens politely. But afterward, people ask another individual what should actually be done. The decision changes. The leader spoke, but influence decided. This is the quiet destruction Machiavelli described. Weak leaders lose the ability to shape outcomes. They speak, but nothing changes. They decide, but nothing moves. They lead but no one follows, and still they remain in position. This illusion delays realization. The leader thinks he still holds power, but power has already migrated. Machiavelli believed this migration is the most dangerous moment, because the leader, unaware, continues acting normally. Meanwhile, others consolidate influence. By the time the leader notices, alliances have formed. Support has shifted. Recovery becomes impossible. Weak leaders often attempt one final effort. They try to assert authority strongly. They issue strict decisions. They confront opposition. But now followers resist openly, not because the decision is wrong, but because they no longer accept authority. The reaction shocks the leader. He expected compliance. Instead, he faces pushback. This confrontation exposes weakness publicly. Once weakness becomes visible, collapse accelerates. People who were uncertain now see confirmation. They align with stronger figures. The leader becomes isolated. Machiavelli understood isolation destroys leaders faster than opposition. Because isolated leaders lose information, they stop hearing truth. Advisors become cautious. Followers avoid honesty. The leader now operates in uncertainty. This uncertainty creates mistakes. The leader misjudges loyalty. He trusts the wrong individuals. He underestimates opposition. Each mistake weakens him further. Weak leaders often begin blaming others at this stage. They accuse advisors. They suspect betrayal. But Machiavelli believed betrayal is not the cause. It is the result. People betray weak leadership because survival demands it. Aligning with instability is risky. Followers protect themselves by shifting allegiance. This is not always malicious. It is human nature. People follow strength because strength promises stability. When stability disappears, loyalty becomes flexible. Machiavelli saw leaders who demanded loyalty without providing certainty. This contradiction destroyed them. Followers felt unsafe. They quietly prepared alternatives. Weak leaders interpret this as disloyalty. Strong leaders understand it as consequence. Authority must be maintained constantly. It cannot rely on past respect. Every moment reinforces perception. Once perception breaks, even long loyalty fades. Imagine a leader admired for years. Then he hesitates during crisis. Followers forgive once, then again. But repeated hesitation changes perception. The admired leader becomes uncertain. The certain leader becomes alternative. Gradually, admiration shifts. Machiavelli believed reputation is fragile. It builds slowly but collapses quickly. Weak leaders damage reputation through inconsistency. They appear strong sometimes, weak others. This unpredictability creates doubt. Followers prefer consistent firmness over fluctuating kindness. Because consistency creates security. Weak leaders create emotional uncertainty. People do not know what to expect. They hesitate, they wait. They reduce commitment. Reduced commitment weakens leadership further. Eventually, the leader senses distance. Conversations become formal. Energy disappears. Initiative declines. People follow only when necessary. This emotional withdrawal signals final stage. Machiavelli observed that once followers emotionally detach, leadership ends. Even if the leader remains in power, influence is gone. At this point, removal becomes easy. Opponents face little resistance. Followers accept change. The transition appears natural. The weak leader falls quietly. No dramatic overthrow, no loud rebellion, just replacement. This is why Machiavelli warned rulers never to allow perception of weakness. Because once it forms, destruction becomes inevitable. Weak leaders believe they are being fair. But fairness without strength invites challenge. Strength without fairness creates fear. But fear with respect sustains authority. Machiavelli preferred measured firmness, calm, decisive, controlled strength. Not aggression, not cruelty, but certainty. Certainty stabilizes followers. Stability builds loyalty. Loyalty protects leadership. Weak leaders reverse this chain. Hesitation creates instability. Instability creates doubt. Doubt dissolves loyalty. And when loyalty dissolves, power disappears. This is why weak leaders are always destroyed. Not by enemies, not by betrayal, but by the slow collapse of confidence around them. And in the end, weak leaders rarely understand why they fell. They look back and see no single enemy, no sudden rebellion, no dramatic betrayal, only distance. People who once supported them became quiet. Advisors who once agreed began hesitating. Followers who once trusted them stopped relying on them. The collapse felt invisible because it was. Machiavelli believed that leadership is not destroyed in battle, it is destroyed in perception. The moment people stop believing a leader can protect stability, they begin preparing for someone else. This preparation happens silently. No announcements, no confrontation, just gradual withdrawal. And the weak leader, trying to hold unity, becomes more accommodating. He softens decisions. He avoids conflict. He tries to rebuild trust, but every concession reinforces the same message. He is unsure. He is dependent. He is afraid to assert control. Machiavelli understood that fear of conflict is the beginning of leadership collapse. Because conflict, when necessary, defines authority. Without it, boundaries blur. And once boundaries blur, power fragments. Weak leaders try to keep everyone comfortable. Strong leaders keep direction clear. Comfort without direction creates drift, and drift invites ambition. Ambitious individuals rise in uncertain environments. They speak confidently. They provide direction. People begin listening. The center shifts. The weak leader notices too late. By the time he tries to act firmly, perception has already formed. Followers resist. Advisors hesitate. Support dissolves. Authority becomes symbolic. Machiavelli observed rulers who remained on the throne but lost control. Their words carried no weight. Their decisions changed nothing. Their presence no longer shaped outcomes. They were leaders in name, not in reality. This is the final stage. The weak leader becomes irrelevant. Not hated, not attacked, just unnecessary. And irrelevance is the quietest destruction. Because leadership exists only when people rely on you. The moment reliance disappears, power evaporates. The leader stands alone, holding position but not influence. Machiavelli believed this happens because human nature seeks certainty. People follow the one who appears capable of guiding them safely. When a leader hesitates, followers search for stability elsewhere. This search is instinctive. They do not intend betrayal. They seek security. Weak leaders fail because they misunderstand loyalty. They believe loyalty comes from kindness. But Machiavelli understood loyalty comes from confidence. People remain loyal to those who appear strong enough to protect them. Strength does not mean cruelty. It means decisiveness. It means clarity. It means calm authority. Strong leaders speak less but decide firmly. They listen, but they conclude. They allow discussion, but they maintain direction. This consistency builds trust. Weak leaders listen endlessly but decide slowly. They adjust constantly. They avoid choosing sides. This creates uncertainty. Uncertainty weakens trust. Weak trust weakens loyalty. Weak loyalty weakens power. And once power weakens, collapse begins. Machiavelli's warning was simple but ruthless. A leader must never allow himself to appear weak. Because once that perception forms, even allies begin preparing for change. Weakness spreads faster than strength. One hesitant decision becomes reputation. One retreat becomes expectation. One compromise becomes pattern. Followers adapt quickly. They reduce dependence. They form alternatives. They align with stronger voices. The leader, trying to regain control, becomes reactive. But reaction confirms weakness. Strong leaders shape events. Weak leaders respond to them. This difference determines survival. Machiavelli saw leaders destroyed not by force, but by silence. Rooms grew quieter. Support faded. Influence moved. Eventually, removal felt natural. No one fought for them because no one needed them. This is the ultimate truth. Weak leaders are not destroyed by enemies. They are destroyed by irrelevance. When people stop needing you, they stop following you. When they stop following you, they stop protecting you. When they stop protecting you, power disappears. And once power disappears, the fall is inevitable. Machiavelli's lesson remains timeless. Leadership is psychological. Authority is perception. Power is confidence. The leader who appears calm, decisive, and certain becomes trusted. The leader who hesitates, softens, and avoids conflict becomes questioned. Questioning leads to distance. Distance leads to isolation. Isolation leads to collapse. Weak leaders try to be liked. Strong leaders focus on being relied upon. Because reliance creates loyalty, and loyalty sustains power. In the end, the difference between strong and weak leadership is not intelligence, not morality, not even position. It is certainty. The strong leader decides. The weak leader hesitates. And in the world, Machiavelli observed, hesitation is the beginning of destruction, because power never stays empty. If the leader does not hold it firmly, someone else will. Quietly, patiently, inevitably.